Hello my beautiful watchers, and welcome back to, well, not Lost in Adaptation, because we're doing a straight up book review today, namely The Company of Death by Elisa Hansen. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the real name of Maven of the Eventide, a YouTuber primarily known for her video discussions of vampire-themed literature and movies. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, there's the thing. Maybe check it out when we're done. Because I'm not at all jealous about Elisa being multi-talented enough to be a successful YouTuber and a published author, I thought I'd check out her book and let you guys know what I think. Before we get really into this, I should put some cards on the table. I had some baggage that I brought into this one with me, though it wasn't all negative. Wait, can you have positive baggage? Well, I'm already mixing up metaphors, so let's pretend so for the sake of being expeditious. On the negative front, I knew that this book heavily involved zombies, and I am so not into them walking corpses. I've never been particularly into them as a concept, and I feel what little potential they did have has been thoroughly used up since the Night of the Living Dead popularized them in the 1960s. But on the positive side, I am a huge fan of Elisa's channels, so I was predisposed to wanting to give this book a fair chance. So maybe these things cancel each other out, or maybe this is going to be the most convoluted combination of conflicting subjectivity ever seen in an internet book review. Because I've gravitated away from zombie-themed books as much as possible until now, I may not be the best person to be making this review. I might end up mistaking things that are actually so common they might be considered tropes as originality. I'm sure someone will let me know in the comments if that happens though. I'm also going to make more than the usual amount of effort to stay spoiler safe on this one, so I'm not going to be doing my usual comprehensive plot synopsis or hyper-focus on any particular twist, but I will have to explain the basic setup of the world and the characters, so if you would like to go into this one completely blind and just want to know if I recommend it, yes I do. The links to where you can buy it will be in the video description. Okay, on to the review. The first thing you should know about this book is it's the first of a trilogy, so it's not a complete story. I'll talk more about that in just a bit. One of the things that I noticed early on in this book is that the world building is superb. It's perfectly balanced in how much backstory is provided, so it seems intriguing and you're not confused by anything, while simultaneously avoiding dumping too much information on us so there's no mystery left. I was very relieved to discover that this book utilizes zombies in what I consider to be the only good way, as a constant background menace and world feature, but not as the main antagonists. Okay, very basic teaser synopsis, so you have the gist of what I'm about to talk about. The entire world has been overrun with zombies, with most of the population falling victim to the undead hordes. What little of humanity that's left has mostly fallen into two competing factions: the Life Preservation Initiative, a paramilitary organization based in New York that's attempting to preserve humanity through the eradication of the undead, and the vampire communes. Yep, vampires are real in this book, shocking no one familiar with Elisa's channel, I'm sure. Apparently, bloodsuckers have always been around, but they only went public after the end of the world, offering their protection to humans from zombies in exchange for lifelong servitude and letting them feed off them on a regular basis. So, right off the bat, Elisa has taken this particular zombie story in an atypical direction. Mixing vampires and zombies isn't unheard of, but I do like the fact that she's also factored in the almost political nature of their new relationship with humans. More evidence that this isn't your run-of-the-mill post-apocalyptic zombie book is the revelation that the outbreak didn't occur in contemporary times. Unless I missed it, the exact date of the main event, referred to as the Ecuador explosion, isn't specified, but the technology left over from the before times is significantly more advanced than what we have now. The most obvious example being one of the main characters as a frickin' android, so there's that. There's also some pretty cool stuff like most cars coming with solar panels as standard. It's the sort of grounded science fiction that comes from thinking logically about where the tech is heading right now and how that might be implemented into everyday use, so my favorite kind as it happens. So yeah, this book is a pretty even balance of horror, fantasy and science fiction, and I found myself pretty into it. There are three narrators that the book is unevenly split between. Emily, a junior member of the LPI, gets the most attention, followed by a gentleman named Scott and a vampire named Leif. Non-POV but still important characters include Carol, the powerful combat android, or gynoid as her creator calls her because she built and programmed her to identify as female, and the personification of death itself. Yes indeed, the title of this book is way more literal than one might expect. The Grim Reaper is one of the main cast. Now I really don't want to give too much away, but the general idea is Death loses a lot of his powers, including his ability to travel instantaneously, and as a result people stop dying, kind of in a reverse Final Destination kind of way. While this sounds good in principle, they can still be turned into zombies, so it's not all fun and games. Plus, it turns out there are worse things that can happen to humanity than passing on to the next world, so for this and several other reasons, Emily and Death team up to try to get his powers back. Emily makes for a good hero because she's a very flawed character, but in an interesting way. She's a big old bundle of issues, but I suppose who wouldn't be if they'd lived through the zombie apocalypse and seen everyone they care about die horribly. She also goes through some next level crazy shit near the start of the story, which again I can't really go into for spoiler related reasons, but holy crap does this poor girl have a lot to deal with. Leif is also an interesting character. This might not be exactly what was going on, but the impression that I got is that he's more of an old school vampire, you know, the well-dressed and oddly charming despite their willingness to rip off your head sort of guy, but he's surrounded by more modernized, gritty reboot style vampires obsessed with power and domination, so he really doesn't get on with them very well at all. One of the things I like the most about this book is the subtle way the writing style changes when it switches to being narrated by a vampire character. Leif's thoughts are a lot more poetic and flowery than the human protagonists. He's got a bit of Louis from Interview with a Vampire in him, though he's much more cheerful and optimistic. It's a really nice touch that Elisa took into account that a 400-year-old being would view the world and think very differently to a mortal. You'd be amazed how many authors don't do that. Elisa has put to good use the years that she spent discussing the philosophical balance of good and evil that vampires represent, their potential sociological and economical impact on the world, the theoretical psychological conditions that might result of their immortality, the moral issues of their need to kill to live and how that impacts their right to exist, and 100 other aspects of the concept of vampires. What I'm saying is, these are some fucking nuanced bloodsuckers. Carol the Gynoid is kind of a badass, and I very much like the description of her being realistically human but also not so, sort of an uncanny valley sort of thing. She's also described as having LED lights that change colour with her mood or intention. I'm also apparently a big fan of women who can pop lasers out of their arms and blow shit up. I didn't know that was a kink of mine, but I'm always open to new things. Our final POV character, Scott, is in comparison not nearly as interesting, and truth be told, I guess he's the first real negative of this review because unfortunately I found him intensely unlikable. He's incredibly sexist, entitled and immature, and he spends most of his time slot griping about ex-girlfriends and wishing for the finer things in life now denied him by the end of the world. He's also prone to throwing tantrums and lashing out at his robot protector whenever things don't go according to plan. A protector he often disparages not for being inhuman but for being female, which he seems to believe is the root of most of the issues he has with her. However, before we go any further, I want to make it clear that I am 100% sure that this is intentional on the part of the author. This isn't an E.L. James Christian Grey sort of thing. Scott isn't portrayed as a hero, misunderstood or otherwise, so I really don't think you're supposed to like him. The fact that he's the only immature person left on the planet actually makes a kind of sense, because he has such a powerful guardian shielding him from the ravages of the zombie apocalypse. He hasn't had to grow up like Emily and the rest of humanity have to survive. It's a privilege rather unique to him, I suspect. I also don't think for a second that he's going to stay this way. This strikes me as very much a person at the start of his character arc. He does look like he's about to start making improvements when he realizes what a butt he's been, but unfortunately this happens right at the end of the book, like I think the second to last chapter. Because this is book 1 of 3, we're pretty much stuck with the douchebag version of him all the way through it. Maybe once I've had a chance to read the other 2, I'll retroactively like Scott more, but we'll have to see, I guess. Getting back to positive stuff, I think one of the nicest things I can say about any book is it reminded me of the works of one of my favourite authors. This book actually reminded me of my top 3 favourite authors at some point or another. Making Death a strange but surprisingly human character was very Terry Pratchett-esque. The mostly professional but slightly chaotic nature of the LPI military gave me strong Bernard Cornwell vibes, and the way that the artificial intelligence interacts with humanity reminded me of Neil Asher. I was mildly suspicious about the revelation that the Life Preservation Initiative apparently cleared out Manhattan and fortified the city. I mean, you would have thought that New York would be the absolute last place in America you could completely de-zombie, what with the insanely high population and all those buildings you'd have to clear out and all the many places zombies could be hiding. Plus, even if you did destroy all the bridges and tunnels, couldn't they just walk along the bottom of the rivers to get there? Isn't that usually a thing with zombies? But perhaps that's going to be a plot point in later books, because you never actually see Manhattan in this installment. It's mostly set in Southern California, so perhaps there's more going on there than the main characters believe. I was impressed with the psychology explored in this book in multiple areas. Early on, there's a mention of something called phantom howls. Basically, a person thinks they can hear zombies even when there's none around because they've spent so long having to be hyper aware of them. The connection between vampirism and sexuality has been around pretty much as long as the vampire mythos itself, but Elisa takes it to an interesting level by mixing sexual hang-ups and control issues into the works as well. It's not something I feel qualified to deconstruct in any detail because I lack the expertise she has, but I was impressed by it. This is a very LGBTQ-friendly book, though there are no overt romantic subplots within it, what with everyone being so indisposed staying alive. However, multiple characters mention having had both genders as lovers in the past. Emily mentions that sex was something that she strictly did to please her partners and got nothing out of herself, so she might have been written as asexual like the author, and while I think it would be interesting to have an asexual hero for once, I don't want to assume that based on so little evidence. The use of tension and apprehension as writing tools is top-notch in the start of this book. It fades a bit when the supernatural stuff really gets going about a third of the way in, because it's kind of hard to feel scared for someone who has death itself watching out for her, but it was really good while it lasted. If you're tempted to read this but are worried about the possible gore factor that comes integral to most zombie tales, fear not. While this book doesn't shy away from blood, neither does it revel in the grotesque to the point of being off-putting. I consider myself quite squeamish, and I had no issues. Satisfyingly, Emily asks Death all the questions I suspect the average reader would if they were in her place. Is there an afterlife? Does the soul exist? Why do you look like a skeleton in a robe? Probably wisely, Elisa does not go the Bill and Ted route of saying, yes, heaven's that way, hell is down there, and that is your soul kicking about behind the bins as it happens. Instead, Death is unable or unwilling to describe these things in words humans can understand. The supernatural is, not entirely surprisingly, so far beyond a mortal being's ken there is no point him trying to explain it. Right, I suppose I should probably talk about the negatives too, though besides Scott, there's not a lot I took issue with. There's a couple of very minor tiresome tropes and cliches in there, and there might have been a science fiction terminology mistake here and there, though I could be wrong about that, I'm not an expert. One of Death's character traits, being incessantly pedantic about the terminology of what he is and what he does, also grated on me after a while, but again, I suspect that was intentional, so I don't know if it counts as a negative or not. Gun to my head, I would probably say that my single biggest issue with this book is that an awful lot of it, possibly a little too much, is all set up. I personally could have used just a little bit more payoff than we actually got at the end. To me, it kind of reads like it's a novelization of a pilot episode to a TV show. The team gets together at the end, but they don't make any real progress towards their final goal aside from that. You could, of course, potentially make this same complaint about any book 1 of 3, but I think in this case it was exacerbated by its length. It's too short to have enough of its own identity outside of the trilogy in the way something like The Fellowship of the Ring did. Yeah, I know, a comparison to Tolkien, a super fair thing to do to any author. But, like I said right at the start, and I hope I have justified saying, I do recommend this book. Elisa has real talent, I think people will genuinely enjoy her work, and I hope to see a lot more from her in the future. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. Don't forget to check out Elisa's channel, and until we meet again, remember that I really would rather deal with the zombie apocalypse than the unknowable horror of the YouTube algorithm, but liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing is a powerful shield against it. See you soon. Hello again, my beautiful watchers. I just wanted to take this opportunity to give you a quick reminder that there's a wonderful website called Patreon that's been allowing online producers to actually make a living doing what they do, since apparently YouTube's decided that they shouldn't anymore. Basically, they offer the chance to pledge a certain amount of money per month or per video in exchange for various rewards offered by the creator. There's a variety of stuff you can earn by becoming one of my patrons, including early access to all videos and taking part in that survey you see at the start of every Lost in Adaptation episode. That's actually a very important part of the process, as I use it to gauge how much I'm going to need to explain about the book and the film before I start comparing them. If you decide to become a higher level contributor, your name will be added to the credits that you're seeing right now, and you'll be given the option to join my private chat room so you can regularly talk with me and other patrons. If you're keen enough to join the topmost tier of patronage, you'll earn the most coveted of all the rewards, the chance to pick a future adaptation to be reviewed by yours truly. However, if right now you are thinking, my goodness, the Dom, I can't do that. The Llama King will not allow it.
The Llama King sees all. The Llama King cannot be opposed. The Llama King is everything!
Fear not, it would still be a huge help to me if you were to give that like button the old clickaroo, share this episode on social media with perhaps a little recommendation to your friends to check it out, and subscribe if you've not already. It really helps my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. I hope you have a most pleasant day, and I will see you in the next episode.